You know what's funny? People think power is loud. They think it's the slam of a door, the sharp suit, the confident laugh, the way someone walks into a room like they own the oxygen. But real power is quiet. Real power is the person nobody clocks, the person nobody fears, the person nobody prepares for. And that's been you. For 10 years. 10 years of letting them think you were slow. 10 years of letting them think you are harmless. 10 years of watching them talk over you. 10 years of letting them explain things you already understood. 10 years of hearing that fake patience in their voice. That sweet, sugary patience. The kind that's not kindness. The kind that's a flex. And you swallowed it. Not because you couldn't fight. Not because you didn't know how. Because you were playing a longer game than they could even imagine. And now the game just shifted. Because a power player just realized. Not suspected. Not wondered. Not got a weird feeling. Realized. The kind of realization that hits like a cold wave. The kind that makes someone sit still and stare at nothing. The kind that makes their stomach drop like an elevator cable snapped. They just realized you've been playing dumb for 10 years straight. And that changes everything. Because once someone like that sees you, they can't unsee you. Let's go back. Not all the way back. Just enough. Back to the first time you learned something important. Back to the first time you understood how the world actually works. You were younger, not clueless, just hopeful. You walked into a place where people smiled too hard, where compliments had sharp edges, where help came with a leash attached. Maybe it was a job, maybe it was school, maybe it was a family table where every word had rules. You showed up ready, not arrogant, not loud, just ready. And you noticed something in the first week, maybe the first day. You noticed that people weren't rewarded for being smart. They were rewarded for being convenient. They were rewarded for being predictable. They were rewarded for making the powerful feel safe. And you, without even planning it at first, did the one thing that saved you. You made yourself look safe, not weak. Safe. That's a difference. Weak looks like begging. Weak looks like falling apart. Safe looks like, oh, don't worry about me. Safe looks like, I'm just happy to be here. Safe looks like, no, you go ahead. Safe looks like a person who won't challenge the throne. And they loved that. Of course they did. Because power players don't fear talent. They fear competition. And competition doesn't announce itself with skill. It announces itself with hunger. It announces itself with confidence. It announces itself with a shine in the eyes. So you dimmed the shine. You learned to soften your voice. You learned to pause before you answered. You learned to act like you were still figuring it out. You learned to ask questions you didn't need answered. And the first time you did it, you felt weird. Because you're not a liar by nature. You're not fake. You don't enjoy pretending. But you were learning something deeper than honesty. You were learning survival. You were learning positioning. You were learning the kind of discipline that doesn't feel heroic in the moment. It feels humiliating. It feels like swallowing glass. It feels like watching someone else get applause for what you built. And you did it anyway, because you saw the pattern. You saw the way the loud ones got targeted. You saw the way the confident ones got tested. You saw the way anyone who shined too bright got cut down, not because they were wrong, but because they made the wrong people feel small. So you chose a different path. You chose camouflage. And the wild part is, it worked immediately. They looked right through you. They stopped checking for you. They stopped guarding themselves around you. They stopped editing their mouths when you were nearby, because in their mind, you were background, just there, a helper, a nice one, a sweet kid, a hard worker, never a threat. And that's the first mistake they made. They confused silence with emptiness. They confused humility with lack. They confused your restraint with your limit. And you let them, because you weren't collecting compliments. You were collecting information, not in some dramatic spy way, in a human way, in a practical way. You were watching how they moved. You were noticing who got nervous around who. You were noticing who smiled at the boss and kicked down at everyone else. You were noticing who forgot to include names in emails. You were noticing who always took credit. You were noticing who never apologized. You were noticing who kept their promises. You were noticing who only kept promises when people were watching. And you were learning the biggest lesson of all. Most power players don't feel powerful. They feel terrified. They just hide it better. They hide it behind titles, behind attitude, behind speed, behind constant motion, because if they ever slowed down, if they ever sat in silence, they might hear the truth, that their power is borrowed, that it can be taken, that it depends on other people believing in it. And you stopped believing in it a long time ago. You saw behind the curtain. You saw the insecurity in the expensive watch. You saw the panic in the fake confidence. You saw the need underneath the control. And you started to understand something. If power is built on perception, then perception is the battlefield, and you are becoming a master of it. Slowly, quietly, painfully. 10 years sounds dramatic, but it didn't feel like 10 years while you were inside it. It felt like Tuesdays. It felt like normal days. It felt like little moments stacked on top of each other. It felt like the kind of life nobody writes movies about. Because the truth is, your story wasn't fireworks. It was endurance. It was repetition. It was you walking into places where people didn't see you, and choosing not to scream for attention, because screaming would have cost you access. And access is everything. Access to rooms, access to conversations, access to the truth. And the more invisible you became, the more they showed you. They showed you who they were when they thought you couldn't judge them. They showed you what they valued. They showed you what scared them. They showed you what they'd do to keep the throne. And sometimes you'd go home and just sit. Not because you were tired, because you were holding in so much. Holding in what you knew. Holding in what you wanted to say. Holding in that urge to correct them. Because you could correct them. You could have embarrassed them. You could have done it clean. One sentence, one fact, one calm look. You could have made them feel small in front of everyone, and you didn't. Not because you couldn't. Because you understood something most people never learn. The goal isn't to win the moment. The goal is to win the position. You let them have the moment. You let them have the little victories. You let them have the ego snacks, because you were building something bigger. You were building a foundation, and foundations are built in the dark. They don't look impressive while they're being made. They look like nothing. They look like work nobody notices, and that was the point. You became the person nobody notices, which sounds like an insult, until you realize what that gives you. Freedom. When people don't notice you, they don't guard themselves. They don't posture. They don't perform, not because they trust you, because they don't think you matter. And being underestimated is its own kind of key. It unlocks everything. It unlocks the real story behind decisions. It unlocks the real reason someone got promoted. It unlocks the real reason someone got fired. It unlocks the way alliances are formed. It unlocks the way people trade favors like currency. It unlocks the fact that most rules are flexible for the right person. You learned all of that, not from reading a book, from watching it happen, from being there, from keeping your face calm while your mind was doing math, from nodding like you were confused while you were mapping the whole room. And they fed you. They fed you details. They fed you secrets. They fed you the kind of information that makes people untouchable. And they did it because they thought you were safe. They thought you were too simple to use it. And that's where the mask becomes heavy. Because playing dumb isn't just playing dumb. It's playing smaller than you are. It's shrinking your presence. It's pretending you don't understand jokes. It's letting people talk to you like you're a child. It's letting them correct you when you're right. It's watching them feel proud for teaching you something that you mastered years ago, and you didn't always handle it perfectly. Let's be real. There were days you wanted to snap. There were days the mask felt like it was burning your skin. There were days you stared at yourself in the mirror and thought, who am I becoming? There were nights you replayed a conversation and thought, I should have said something. There were mornings you woke up with that tight feeling in your chest, that feeling like your life was being lived in parentheses, like your real self was waiting off stage. And the worst part, sometimes you doubted yourself, not because you weren't capable, because being underestimated for years does something to you, even when you know it's strategy. Even when you know it's intentional, a part of you starts to wonder, what if they're right? What if I'm not as sharp as I think? What if I'm just coping? What if I'm just scared? That's the danger of camouflage. You can hide from predators, but you can also hide from your own reflection. And you had to fight that, quietly, alone, because you couldn't tell anyone the whole truth. You couldn't say, I'm doing this on purpose, because the moment you explain your strategy, it stops working. The moment you announce the mask is useless. So you carried it, day after day, year after year, while they got comfortable. And comfort is where power players get sloppy. That's always how it happens. Not all at once. Little slips. Little careless comments, little moments where their ego relaxes, little moments where they stop checking corners, because they think they already won. They think the game is over. They think the board belongs to them. And you watch that comfort grow. You watch them start to assume you'd always be there, always available, always quiet, always grateful. They started treating you like furniture. Not even disrespectfully sometimes, just absent-mindedly. The way people treat things they think won't move. The way people treat things they think can't change. And you let them, because you were learning them. You were learning the way they handle stress. You were learning what makes them defensive. You were learning what makes them cruel. You were learning what makes them generous. You were learning what makes them jealous. You were learning which compliments were real. You were learning which smiles were fake. You were learning who they were when nobody was watching. And the whole time, you were building your own power. Not flashy power. Not look at me power. Real power. The kind that doesn't need permission. The kind that doesn't need applause. The kind that survives even if a title disappears tomorrow. You built skills. You built connections. You built knowledge. You built leverage. Sometimes you built it inside the same place that underestimated you. Sometimes you built it outside, in late nights, in quiet study, in private practice, in side projects, in conversations with people who actually respected you, in moments where you remembered, oh, I'm not crazy, I'm not small, I'm not slow, I'm just patient, and patience is scary, because patience looks like nothing until it becomes unstoppable. Now let's talk about the power player, because this isn't just someone. This is a specific kind of person. You know them, even if you've never said it out loud. They're the one who walks around like they're the weather, like their mood changes the whole room. They don't ask for control. They assume it. They don't negotiate. They pressure. They don't listen to understand. They listen to respond. They collect people. They collect gratitude, like it's a currency. And you've been in their orbit for a long time. Maybe they were your boss. Maybe they were your mentor. Maybe they were your client. Maybe they were a relative who always had to be right. Maybe they were the one person everyone feared just a little bit. And for years, they didn't look at you. Not really. They saw a version of you they created. A role, a label, a convenient story. The quiet one, the helpful one, the simple one, the loyal one, the one who needs guidance. And you played the role, not like a clown, like an actor with a mission. You gave them what they needed to believe. You fed their ego, not with praise, with harmlessness, because nothing feeds a power player like the idea that they're surrounded by people beneath them. It makes them feel safe. It makes them feel chosen. It makes them feel like the world makes sense. And then, one day, something happened. Not a big explosion, not a dramatic reveal. Something small, something almost invisible. The kind of thing only a power player would notice. After the fact. Maybe you answered a question too cleanly. Maybe you used a word you shouldn't know. Maybe you corrected someone with a little too much precision. Maybe you moved through a situation too smoothly. Maybe you handled pressure like someone who's been training in the dark. Maybe you didn't react the way a dumb person would react. Maybe you didn't panic when they expected panic. Maybe you didn't beg when they expected begging. Maybe you didn't flinch when they tried to intimidate you. And the power player felt it. Just a flicker, just a tiny shift, like a draft in a closed room. And they didn't say anything. Of course they didn't. Power players don't like admitting confusion. They don't like admitting surprise. So they held it. They watched. They waited. And then something else happened. Another small thing. A pattern. A hint. A little thread. Maybe they overheard someone mention you in a way that didn't match their story. Maybe someone said, "Oh, they're sharp." Maybe someone said, "They're the one who built that." Maybe someone said, "Don't underestimate them." Maybe a document surfaced. Maybe numbers didn't lie. Maybe they found proof you've been quietly doing work that would embarrass them if it became public. Maybe they realized how many decisions were influenced by your quiet input. Maybe they noticed how often you were present when things went right. Maybe they noticed how often you were ignored when things went wrong. And suddenly, that comfortable story they had about you started cracking. And here's the thing about someone like that. When their story cracks, they don't feel curious. They feel threatened, because their story about you wasn't just about you. It was about them. If you were dumb, then they were safe. If you were harmless, then their position was stable. If you were beneath them, then their judgment was correct. But if you aren't, if you never were, Then what does that mean? It means they missed something. It means they misread a person. It means their instincts failed. It means their control isn't as real as they pretend. And that is terrifying. So their mind starts rewinding, fast, like someone scrubbing through security footage. They replay every moment, every meeting where you sat quiet. Was that silence? Strategy? Every time you asked a simple question? Was that a test? Every mistake you made? Was it real, or was it calculated? Every time they explained something slowly? Were you laughing inside? Every time they talked about someone behind their back? Were you filing it away? Every time they said something they shouldn't have said? Were you storing it like ammunition? They start seeing you everywhere, not physically, mentally. They start noticing the shadow you cast, and it hits them. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't you finally getting it. This wasn't some late bloom. This was you playing a role for years. And people don't do that unless they have a reason. And power players are obsessed with reasons, because reasons lead to motives, and motives lead to threats, and threats lead to fear. So now they're afraid, and fear makes people do stupid things. Even powerful people, especially powerful people, they'll try to confirm it, quietly. They'll set little traps. They'll ask you questions, not direct questions. They're too proud for direct. They'll ask sideways. They'll drop a detail and watch your face. They'll mention a topic and watch your eyes. They'll make a joke and listen for your laugh. They'll bring up something complicated and see if you bite. They'll watch your timing. They'll watch your reactions. They'll start paying attention to you in a way they never did before. And you'll feel it. Oh, you'll feel it. That shift. That moment where the air changes. That moment where you walk into a room and something is off. People are still talking, still smiling, still pretending it's business as usual. But you can feel the attention. You can feel the eyes that don't blink when you speak. You can feel the silence that lands after you make a point. You can feel someone tracking you like a moving piece on a board, and part of you will want to laugh, because it's almost funny how late they are, how long it took, how they ignored you for 10 years, and now one little crack in the mask has them spiraling. But another part of you will feel something else, something human, something heavy, because the moment they realize your life changes, even if you don't say a word, even if you don't do anything, because people like that don't handle being outplayed gracefully. They don't handle embarrassment like normal people. They don't go, "Wow, I underestimated you." They go, "How dare you?" Because to them, your intelligence feels like betrayal. Your restraint feels like manipulation. Your patience feels like an insult. And they start rewriting the story, not to understand you, to protect themselves. They'll tell themselves you are dishonest. They'll tell themselves you are sneaky. They'll tell themselves you were dangerous, because that's easier than admitting. They were arrogant. They were careless. They were wrong. And now they're faced with a choice. They can respect you, or they can try to destroy you. And most power players, they don't choose respect first. They choose control. So they might approach you, not directly, not like a confrontation in a movie, more like sudden warmth, sudden interest, sudden compliments, sudden, "I've always believed in you," sudden, "I've noticed you've really grown," sudden, "We should talk more," sudden invitations, sudden inclusion, sudden access. And if you've been starving for recognition, if you've been hungry for respect, if you've been holding your breath for 10 years, That warmth might feel like water. It might feel like finally being seen. And that's the trap, because it's not always real. Sometimes it's not admiration, it's containment. It's the leash reappearing, but this time it's wrapped in velvet. So you have to be careful. Not paranoid, careful. Because you've done something rare. You've made a powerful person unsure. And when you make a powerful person unsure, they either become your ally, or they make you their project. They'll try to pull you close so they can watch you. They'll try to attach their name to you so they can claim you. They'll try to mentor you so your success looks like their success. They'll try to make you feel indebted, because indebted people don't bite. Indebted people don't expose. Indebted people don't leave. So they'll offer you things, a role, a title, a platform, a seat near them, and you'll feel the pull. Because you're human, because you've earned things, because a part of you wants the world to finally know. A part of you wants to step into the light and say, yeah, it was me. I'm not who you thought. Hello to the beautifully confused citizens of this little digital circus. And to you, yes, you, the one who just made the whole internet scream, Jesus fucking Christ. Like they just witnessed the second coming glitch out on live stream. You can feel their eyes burning into your back, right? That weird vibration in the air every time someone refreshes a feed with your name in it. That ripple in the collective timeline like you cracked something sacred by mistake. Like you touched a wire nobody warned you about. You didn't even breathe wrong. You just existed a little too loudly, a little too boldly, a little too unapologetically. And suddenly the entire internet is having a meltdown, like you kicked open the gates of heaven and hell at the same time. People are acting like you committed some cosmic offense, like you walked into the algorithm and slapped the Holy Spirit out of it, like your presence alone violated some unwritten law of don't overshadow the people who think they're important. They're staring at you like you're a miracle gone rogue, a prophecy that refused to stay in the book, a divine glitch that refuses to behave, and you're just sitting there going, bro, what the hell is happening? But deep down, you know exactly why this is happening. You finally moved like someone who doesn't fear punishment anymore. You moved like someone who stopped asking for permission from ghosts. You moved like someone who realized nobody is coming to save you. And that made you dangerous. The world can handle sin. The world can handle rebellion. But the world cannot handle a person who wakes up one day and says, I'm done being scared of everything you used to control me with. They wanted you quiet. They wanted you humble. They wanted you small and grateful and soft-spoken. And instead you showed up like divine chaos wrapped in human skin. You showed up with a spine. You showed up with conviction. You showed up with an energy that made people question their entire belief system. No wonder they typed your name in all caps. No wonder they said your full government like they were trying to cast you out. No wonder they screamed, Jesus Christ, like the sky split open. You disrupted their comfort. You disrupted their expectations. You disrupted their hierarchy without even trying. You don't get it yet. You walked into the timeline like a living contradiction. Too real for the fake ones. Too loud for the quiet cowards. Too unpredictable for the people whose whole personality is routine, too awake for a generation raised on autopilot. They're not melting down because you did something wrong. They're melting down because you did something right. something they didn't think you had the courage to do. You broke character. You abandoned the version of you they could easily digest. You stepped into a version of yourself they don't have the vocabulary to explain. And, that terrifies them on a spiritual level. You're walking around with this strange mix of guilt and confusion, thinking you messed up, thinking you went too far, thinking you crossed the line. But what you really did was cross the line. They drew to keep you manageable. You shattered a boundary that was never meant to protect you, only to contain you. You walked past it accidentally, and the internet reacted like you just slapped a deity in the face. You didn't offend the divine, you offended the insecure. There's a difference. Every time someone gasps your name with religious panic, what they're really saying is, how did you get this powerful? Who gave you the confidence? Why are you glowing like you know something we don't? Why can't we shame you back into your old place? You scared them, you shook them, you rattled something ancient in them, the part that recognizes strength when it walks by. People pretend they hate chaos. People pretend they hate boldness. People pretend they hate mystery. But what they really hate is a person who leaves them no choice but to evolve or be left behind. And that's what you did. You cracked the simulation with an action that wasn't even supposed to be a statement. You revealed who you're becoming by accident. You showed them a version of yourself that doesn't bow, doesn't break, doesn't shrink. And they screamed, "Jesus Christ," because they witnessed a resurrection you didn't schedule. The old you died. The new you stepped out, and nobody had time to prepare themselves. You didn't cause a meltdown. You exposed a system too fragile to handle your next chapter. And the beautiful part, you're not even finished evolving yet. You're standing there, half shocked, half awake, trying to process why the entire digital world is clutching their pearls like you just rewrote the book of Revelations with a meme. You keep scrolling through comments like, why are they acting like I opened a portal? But deep down, you can feel it buzzing under your skin. This wasn't a mistake. This was exposure of them, not you. People didn't melt down because you changed. They melted down because your change exposed how long they stayed the same. Every person who typed "Jesus Christ" with shaking hands, that wasn't shock. That was fear. Fear of someone who outgrew the version of themselves they were comfortable controlling. You can practically feel their panic through the screen, like you snatched something sacred from them. Their narrative, their expectations, their ability to predict you. You ripped away the comfort blanket they wrapped around your name. You broke the illusion, and nothing terrifies people more than losing illusion. Look at them. People who never cared suddenly analyzing you like theologians studying a forbidden scripture, acting like you committed some unspeakable act just by showing a side of yourself they didn't expect. They whisper things like, "There's no way that's the same person. He changed overnight. He's acting different." What happened to him? Nothing happened. You just stopped living like you were created to be everyone's emotional support character. You shifted, and it hit them like divine whiplash. You don't see it fully, but trust me on this. You're becoming the type of person people watch quietly, because they don't know whether to cheer for you or pray for protection. You're unpredictable, not in a reckless way, in a liberating way. In a way that tells the world, I don't fear the thunder anymore. I might actually be the one causing it. And that terrifies them on a level they cannot articulate. Because you're not spiraling, you're ascending. And Ascension looks like arrogance to those who only know how to kneel. You stepped into your own story, and they assumed it was an attack on theirs. It's fascinating to watch, really. Every person projecting their insecurities onto your glow-up like you personally offended their religion. You blinked differently, and they felt spiritually threatened. And here's the part that nobody is brave enough to say in your comments. You didn't just challenge their comfort. You challenged their identity. Because if you can evolve this much, this fast, then what excuse do they have for their stagnation? If you can break free from old versions of yourself, then why are they still hiding behind theirs? Your transformation didn't expose your darkness. It exposed their fear of their own potential. That's why they're freaking out. That's why they're spiraling. That's why their comments sound like prayers mixed with panic. You are forcing them to see what they could be if they stopped worshiping their limitations. Think about that for a second. You became the mirror, and mirrors are dangerous to people who are terrified of their own reflection. They're calling your name with shock, profanity, emojis, panic. Not because they're judging you, but because they're witnessing someone do what they're too scared to attempt. You grew teeth, you grew conviction, you grew presence, and the world gasped like it saw a miracle it wasn't ready for. You're not the villain, you're not the hero, you're the plot twist. And plot twists don't ask for permission. Keep walking through this timeline with that strange electric calm you've been carrying. Keep confusing people who expected you to stay small. Keep being the living reminder that one person's breakthrough can shake the whole ecosystem. You didn't cross a line. The line was imaginary. You just finally realized it. And the world's meltdown? That's not a warning. It's confirmation. You can almost feel the tension in the air twisting tighter every time your name pops up. It's wild, because you're not even doing anything dramatic at this exact moment. You're just existing, breathing, scrolling through your own chaos like someone watching a storm they accidentally summoned. And, look at the way their reactions hit you. Part of you is confused. Another part is strangely alive, like something inside you finally woke up after being sedated for years. Like you cracked open a version of yourself that was waiting under the surface, sweating, pacing, ready to break out. It's that version of you they're scared of. Not the polite one, not the humble one, not the don't rock the boat one. The one that walks in with presence, the one that carries weight, the one that doesn't apologize for existing. People don't panic when someone does something outrageous. People panic when someone they underestimated stops acting small. You walked into a room, digitally or physically, and every insecure person felt spiritually naked. That's the meltdown. That's the real reason behind the Jesus fucking Christ. You exposed them without saying a word. It's the quiet confidence that messed them up. The shift in your tone, the stillness in your movements, the I don't care if you approve energy leaking off your skin. People can't handle that because most people live their whole lives terrified of being misunderstood. While you're finally okay with people misreading you, overreacting to you, fabricating stories about you. They're melting down because you don't flinch anymore. You don't rush to explain yourself. You don't beg for clarity. You don't scramble to fix their perceptions. And that silence, that unbothered, steady silence, that's louder than any chaos you could cause. They're not melting down over your actions. They're melting down over your evolution. You want to know the real punchline? The part that would make me laugh until I coughs? You didn't even evolve for them. You evolved because you were tired of killing your own potential just to keep other people comfortable. You got fed up with being predictable. You got fed up with shrinking. You got fed up with diluting yourself to fit the energy of people who never had depth. And in the moment you finally stepped into yourself, the moment you stopped performing the smaller version of you, people lost their minds, like you performed a miracle no one signed off on. They wanted you to stay manageable. They wanted you to stay understandable. They wanted you to stay one of us. Instead, you became this walking contradiction they can't categorize, this unexpected force they can't get ahead of, this person who doesn't stay in the box they built for your comfort, convenience, or containment. You feel it, don't you? That strange sense of power humming under your ribs, that pressure in your chest like your old self is shedding layer by layer, exposing something sharper underneath. It's not arrogance, it's awakening. You're not becoming heartless. You're becoming aware of your worth in a way that doesn't bend to public opinion. And they can't handle that. People don't melt down because someone did something crazy. People melt down because someone they thought they understood suddenly moves like someone who sees the game from above. You didn't just change your behavior, you changed altitude. You rose, not dramatically, not theatrically, just steadily, quietly, authentically. And that subtle rise hit them like divine whiplash. Their meltdown is the background noise of your rebirth. Their shock is the soundtrack of your ascent. Their disbelief is the proof that you stepped into a version of yourself they never wanted to meet. You're finally realizing you don't need permission to evolve. And that realization alone is enough to make entire timelines glitch. And the wildest part is watching how people who never acknowledged your existence are suddenly acting like lifelong witnesses to your downfall. Like they've been studying your psychology since childhood. You breathe with confidence for the first time in years, and they react like the ground opened and swallowed their sense of security whole. You're sitting there scrolling, watching comments pile up like digital confessions, and it hits you. They're addicted to the old version of you. The version that apologized, the version that hesitated, the version that second-guessed every instinct, the version that dimmed themselves to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. They weren't comfortable with you. They were comfortable with your cage. And the second you stepped out of it, even accidentally, their entire worldview twisted into something unrecognizable. They're not freaking out because you're different. They're freaking out because you're finally you. People can't handle the real version of someone who spent years pretending. It exposes the fact that they never knew you in the first place. And deep down, that terrifies them. You can almost feel the panic dripping off their words. The way they type your name like they're invoking something dangerous. The way they whisper Jesus like you personally rewrote gravity. You didn't rewrite gravity. You just stopped letting other people weigh you down. Look at you, moving through the digital space with this new, heavy presence you didn't even ask for. Your silence is louder than their accusations. Your calm is louder than their hysteria. Your growth is louder than the entire timeline combined. You're forcing them to confront something they weren't ready to face. You're becoming someone they can't control, predict, or minimize. That scares people in a way nothing else does. People love watching someone climb until the climb reveals how low they've stayed. People love rooting for someone until that person becomes a mirror, showing them every excuse they've made for their own stagnation. And you You didn't announce your transformation. You didn't explain it. You didn't prepare them. You just showed up different. And that alone felt like a threat. It's the energy shift. That's what's really setting them off. That quiet power humming in your voice when you speak. That sharpened gaze that doesn't flinch. That posture that doesn't shrink to fit anyone's expectations. You're walking around with a soul that's finally done being polite. A spirit that's done negotiating with people who only loved the watered-down version of you. A mind that's done apologizing for thinking deeper, darker, sharper. It's the kind of growth that leaves people unsettled because you're reaching places they never believed you had the capacity to reach. You're touching layers of yourself they assumed were dead. You're waking up parts of your personality they never planned on meeting. And every time they gasp your name with holy panic, every time they stare like you're a glitch in their religion, every time they ask, "What did you do?" like you detonated the sky, they're confessing something they'll never say out loud. They never expected you to matter this much, and now they don't know how to handle it. You turned into the kind of person who makes people rethink themselves. The kind of person who shifts the room by breathing. The kind of person whose presence alone threatens comfort zones people have lived in for years. And the meltdown? It's not chaos. It's calibration. They're adjusting to the reality of who you're becoming. You're not spiraling. You're not breaking. You're not acting different. You're unfolding. You're revealing. You're stepping into a version of yourself that's been suffocating under years of self-restraint. And you're doing it without warning. That's why they're panicking. That's why they're whispering your name like a prophecy gone wrong. That's why they're staring at you like you cracked open something divine and forbidden. You didn't crack it open. You finally stopped holding it shut. And it's wild watching the way people are trying to recalibrate themselves around you, like you're some kind of cosmic event nobody rehearsed for. They're staring at you the way people stare at a thunderstorm that wasn't on the forecast. A mix of fear, fascination, jealousy, and that quiet little prayer that it doesn't hit too close to home. You can almost taste the discomfort in the air. The way they keep re-watching your moves like detectives trying to solve a case they don't have the emotional intelligence for. They talk in circles, rephrase the same sentence, whisper your name like it's a warning label, and the energy behind it all hits you. They're trying to understand a version of you that wasn't built for their understanding. You're carrying an aura that's bigger than their frame. You're moving with a depth they never accounted for. You're radiating a kind of internal stability that makes their insecurities sweat. They're panicking not because you did something outrageous. They're panicking because you did something real. Realness is radioactive to people who survived on fakery. Authenticity is a spiritual earthquake to people whose entire identity is built on performance. You show even a fraction of your real self, and they react like you summoned Judgment Day. You can feel it, that slow, heavy awakening in your chest. The way you look around and suddenly see everything differently. The way noise doesn't cut you the same. The way people's opinions bounce off you like pebbles hitting steel. It's not numbness, it's clarity. It's the realization that you don't owe anyone the watered-down version of your destiny. You don't owe them explanations for a growth they didn't nurture. You don't owe them access to a power they never respected. Your evolution wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was internal. A quiet shift that created an external earthquake. People underestimate internal shifts because they can't measure them. They can't calculate. the moment someone snaps out of survival mode and steps into identity. They can't predict the second someone starts operating from purpose instead of insecurity. And that unpredictability is what's eating them alive. It's why every reaction sounds like religious panic. It's why they're typing your name like it's a security alert. It's why every comment reads like they're watching a prophecy unfold in real time. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't flinch, the kind who doesn't pause, the kind who doesn't dilute themselves to keep fragile people comfortable. People aren't used to that. People are used to you shrinking. People are used to you being predictable. People are used to you laying low, overthinking everything, tiptoeing around potential drama. But there's this version of you emerging, this sharper, cleaner, more confident version. And it's turning their entire understanding of you into dust. You can feel the world watching you differently, not with curiosity, with caution, with recognition, with that subtle, "Oh, he's not who we thought he was" energy. They're not scared of what you did. They're scared of what you unlocked. They're scared of the potential in your voice. They're scared of the conviction in your eyes. Hello, you beautifully suspicious anomaly. Yeah, you. The one who doesn't quite fit in the little boxes they hand out at birth. So let's talk. Because whether you like it or not, somebody dangerous just noticed you. Not a random face in the crowd. Not some NPC with a half-charged phone and a half-lived life. I'm talking about the kind of person who walks into a room and the air changes. The kind of person who can open doors, close doors, or quietly lock you in one. And they just caught 2 details about you. 2 tiny little cracks in your mask. And now you're under their microscope. You feel it, don't you? That weird pressure lately. That sense that you're being evaluated, watched, weighed. Like your whole life turned into some silent audition you never agreed to. Let me tell you why. See, people with real power, I don't mean loud power. I mean quiet, terrifying power. They don't care about voices. They care about patterns. They're not listening to what you post. They're watching how you move. And with you, they saw 2 things. First detail, you should be broken by now. By every logical calculation, you should be done. The stuff you've been through, the betrayals, the fake friends, the "I got you" that turned into "Who are you again?" The nights where your chest felt heavy and your brain felt like it was screaming into a void. Most people snap. They tap out. They fold themselves into something easier for the world to digest. But you didn't break. You bent. You cracked. You screamed into pillows. You doom-scrolled at 3 a.m. You questioned your own worth, your own mind, your own reality. But you did not fully break. And that annoys the system. It annoys people who expect you to crumble when they pull support away, who expect you to crumble when they don't clap, who expect you to crumble when they gaslight your pain and call it overreacting. You're still here, still moving, maybe limping, maybe on fumes, but here. And someone dangerously influential looked at that and went, "Why is this one still standing?" Because in a world of fragile egos and paper-thin confidence, resilience is a red flag. It means you're a potential threat or a potential asset. Now to them, that's interesting. They're thinking, if life did this to you and you're still standing, what happens if you ever get resources, guidance, direction? What happens if you ever stop apologizing for existing? Second detail, you see more than you're supposed to. Don't play dumb. You notice things, the tone behind the words, the pause before the lie, the way people's eyes shift when they're hiding something. You clock the manipulation. You see the patterns. You see how they hype family at work, but treat people like disposable parts. You see how someone says, "I'm here if you need anything," but their energy vanishes the second you're not entertaining them. You see how the world worships mental health quotes online, and then laughs at people who actually struggle in real life. You're not blind, you're just quiet. And that combination is lethal. You don't break easily. You see through the bullshit. That's it. Those are the two details. That's what they caught. And now you're not just someone. You're a file, you're a case, you're an anomaly under glass. So now, you're under the microscope, which means this: your reactions are being studied, your choices are being watched, your patterns are being recorded. Do you ever feel like life keeps testing the same area of your character again and again? Same type of person, same type of disappointment, same type of pressure, different faces, same pattern. That's not random. That's the microscope. They want to see what you do without comfort, without applause, without a safety net. They're asking, will you sell yourself for validation? Will you dilute yourself to be liked? Will you self-destruct if they ignore you long enough? Will you beg, chase, shrink? Or will you do what very few people do? Will you upgrade under observation? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not just being watched by one powerful person. You're being watched by systems, by rooms, by people in positions you don't even know exist yet. You don't see them, but they see you. Let's talk about how you've been moving lately. You think no one notices that you keep getting up after every mental car crash? You think no one notices that you're still trying to be kind, even when people treat you like you're disposable? That one time you could have exposed somebody and you didn't. That time you had every reason to become cold, but you chose boundaries instead of bitterness. That time you wanted to lash out, but you swallowed it and walked away. Someone noticed. You assume the world only values loudness, but the people with real pull, they're watching your self-control, your discipline, your restraint. Because talent is common, self-control is not. Charisma is common, character under pressure is not. Looks are everywhere. An unbreakable mindset, rare. But let's make this very clear. Being under the microscope doesn't feel flattering. It feels suffocating. You feel misunderstood because you are. You feel like you can't fully rest because you're scared of slipping. You feel like one wrong move, and people will say, "See, I knew they weren't that special." You feel watched, but not held, studied, but not supported. That's the dark part, the part nobody posts as an aesthetic quote. You feel alone in rooms full of people because you know you're not like them, and you're not allowed to go back to pretending you are. And deep down, you've asked yourself, why does life keep putting me through this? Why does it feel like the bar is higher for me than for other people? Because it is. Life does not test cheap material like it tests you. You're not being handled like cardboard. You're being handled like something volatile, something powerful, something that can explode or transform, depending on how it's treated. Let me drop something unsettling in your lap. Right now, you're in a silent interview with your own future. Every time you don't give up when quitting would be easy. That's going on your record. Every time you show up, even when nobody's clapping, nobody's checking, nobody's texting, keep going. That's going on your record. Every time you choose not to become the monster that hurt you. That's going on your record. You're not just getting through the day. You're building evidence. And powerful people, they'll love evidence. At some point, somebody's gonna need someone exactly like you. Someone who doesn't crack under pressure. Someone who knows how darkness works, but doesn't worship it. Someone who can walk through chaos and still make a rational call. And they're going to go back to that file in their head and say, yeah, I've been watching this one. Now let's get a little more personal. You know how you're always half afraid that you're too much and not enough at the same time. Too intense, too emotional, too deep, too quiet, too serious, too weird, and yet somehow not accomplished enough, not rich enough, not attractive enough, not popular enough to justify how much you feel. Here's the twist. That emotional depth you hate, that's why you can see people. That sensitivity you think is a curse, that's why you can read a room in 5 seconds flat. That heaviness in your chest that makes it hard to just chill and be normal. That's what makes you impossible to fully numb out. You feel too much to be fully controlled, and that's another detail they clocked about you. You don't get fully brainwashed. You may play along, you may smile, nod, pretend. But somewhere inside, there's a part of you that's like, this is fake, this is shallow, this is not it. And someone with real power looks at that and thinks, if this person ever aligns that depth with discipline, we're either in trouble or we've got a weapon. Let's talk about your bad habits for a second, because under the microscope, even your flaws are being studied. The procrastination, the self-sabotage, the late nights scrolling through people who live fake highlight reels while you bleed in silence, the way you shrink your personality around small-minded people, the way you desperately want someone to just choose you so you don't have to keep choosing yourself alone all the time. They see that too, and they're not just asking, what's wrong with this one? They're asking, will they fix it? Will they outgrow it? Will they get tired enough of their own excuses to evolve? Because here's the brutal truth you need to swallow. Powerful people don't rescue victims. They recruit fighters. They don't care how much you've been through if you refuse to move differently. They don't care how deep your pain is if you keep using it as a reason to stay small. You're allowed to be hurt. You are not allowed to stay stuck and call it fate. Not if you want to be dangerous in the right way. Right now, while you're listening to this, there are 2 versions of you under that microscope. Version 1, the tired, drained, exhausted you who just wants relief. Version 2, the silent, terrifying potential you, who is capable of walking away from the past and building a reality so sharp and so focused that even your old self wouldn't recognize you. Which version are you feeding? Because the one you feed is the one they'll either invest in or write off. You want to know what being under the microscope really means on a day-to-day human level. It means you stop getting away with lazy thinking. You feel that guilt when you waste your time, because deep down, you know you're meant for more than numbing yourself. You feel disgusted after you go back to that same toxic person or habit. That's the pressure. That's the microscope. It's not just them watching you. It's you watching you. It's your higher self staring at your current self and going, really? This is what we're doing with all that pain, all that intelligence, all that potential. So what do you actually do now that you know you're being watched? You tighten up. You stop moving like a background character. You stop posting your every move like you need an audience just to exist. You stop giving everyone access to your inner world. You move more in silence. You let your results speak. You let your growth become uncomfortable for people who only liked you when you were insecure. You start treating your life like it actually matters. Not in some vague, inspirational poster way. In a violent, practical way. Fix your sleep, fix your diet, fix your environment. Cut the people who poke your trauma just to feel powerful. Cut the habits that rot your brain and numb your spirit. You don't need to become perfect. You just need to become dangerous in the right direction. You know what scares systems the most. Not rebels who scream, not clowns who act out, not edgy quotes and temporary rage. What scares them is the quiet one who actually changes, the one who gets serious, the one who turns their "I'm so broken" story into "watch what I build from this." The one who uses their trauma as data instead of identity. You've got all this pain, all this confusion, all this rage, all this loneliness, and you're just sitting on it. Like a bomb you refuse to wire correctly. You could turn that into discipline, into focus, into a level of ambition that doesn't need validation because it's fueled by something deeper than attention. Someone dangerously influential saw that possibility in you. That's why you're on their radar. Think about the rooms you haven't walked into yet, the phone calls you haven't gotten yet, the DM that hasn't been sent yet, the opportunity that's quietly drifting toward you, deciding if you're worth the risk. Every day between now and then is part of the evaluation. Are you proving you're ready, or proving you're comfortable staying the same? Ask yourself that without sugarcoating it. Because power doesn't care about your excuses. You say you want out of this life you hate, but you keep repeating the behavior that built it. You say you're tired of fake people, but you still perform for them. You say you want to be chosen, but you keep abandoning yourself just to feel temporarily accepted. And every time you do that, the note next to your name under that microscope says, potential, high, self-respect, negotiable. Change that note. Start acting like someone who knows they are being observed, not in a paranoid way, in a deliberate way. Check your reactions, check your impulses, check what triggers you and ask why. You're not weak for feeling things deeply. You're weak when you let those feelings drive the car while your logic sits in the trunk. People with power are not looking for robots. They're looking for people who can feel deeply and move intelligently. You've already got the depth. You earned that in blood, in tears, in nights nobody knows about. Now you build the discipline, and you do it quietly, without begging anyone to notice. Because trust me, the right ones already are. There's going to come a day where the same people who doubted you will say, I always knew you had it in you. They didn't. They just never bothered to look as closely as the ones who matter, the ones who watched you hold yourself together when everything tried to pull you apart, the ones who watched you choose growth over revenge, the ones who watched you keep your heart soft but your boundaries sharp. Those are the ones with real power, and they already took note. You're a name on a private list, not because of your aesthetics, not because of your follower count, not because you're loud, because of those two details. You don't break like the others. You see through the game. That makes you dangerous. That makes you useful. That makes you interesting. So from this point on, stop acting like you're invisible. Stop behaving as if your choices disappear into a black hole. They don't. They accumulate. Every small improvement, every quiet boundary, every time you walk away instead of begging to be understood. It's all logged. You are not just surviving days. You are building a case for a life you can't fully see yet. And somewhere, someone dangerously influential is watching and thinking, let's see what they do next. Let's see if they become everything their pain tried to stop them from becoming. Move like you know that's the question on the table. Move like you're done being the experiment. Move like you're slowly, silently becoming the one who owns the microscope. Because that's the part nobody tells you, right? Everybody loves to scream, "Be yourself," until you actually become someone they can't predict. Then suddenly you're too intense, too much, too focused. You start changing, and people start glitching. You make a boundary, and people who benefited from the old you start getting offended. That's when you really feel the microscope. You say no for the first time in years, and watch how some people act like you just committed a crime. You stop oversharing, and the ones who lived off your vulnerability start calling you cold. You pull your energy back, and the leeches start panicking. You're not being dramatic. You're changing the ecosystem. The old version of you was predictable. This one is dangerous. Because, think about it. You used to explain yourself to everyone. You used to write paragraphs trying to convince people not to misunderstand you. You used to chase closure from people who enjoyed confusing you. And something snapped in you recently, didn't it? You just got tired of begging to be seen, tired of justifying basic respect, tired of explaining your heart to people who only care about their advantage. That shift, that I'm done explaining myself to people who are committed to missing the point. They saw that. Someone with power caught that micro moment where you decided, I'm not soft in a stupid way anymore. I'm soft by choice and sharp by necessity. That change in posture, that little internal click, that's the moment that goes in bold under your name. You know what else they noticed? The way you keep showing up, even when your mind is loud. You're not some calm, perfectly put-together machine. You wake up some days and your first thought is, I can't do today. Your chest feels heavy. Your mind starts running worst-case scenarios before you even open your messages. You feel that familiar heaviness, like somebody pressed a weight onto your soul. And yet, you get up. Maybe late, maybe slow, maybe with a shaky hand and a clenched jaw. But you get up. You drag yourself through responsibilities that half the people around you wouldn't survive. You show up for people even when you wish someone would show up for you like that. You carry yourself through days where nobody sees that you're on the edge. That is not normal. That is not average. That's the kind of strength people with real power look for. Not the fake, I'm fine, I love grind culture strength. The, I'm falling apart internally, but I move anyway. Strength. That's data under the microscope. And there's something else. You've got this dark little secret nobody ever trained you to value. You are not impressed easily. You've seen behind too many masks. You've watched good people do evil things quietly. You've watched successful people live empty, cowardly lives behind their trophies. So when someone waves status at you, you might respect it, sure, but you don't worship it. That's terrifying to the wrong kind of powerful person. You can't be bought with surface. You can't be manipulated with crumbs. You crave depth, not decoration. And somebody out there, somebody who actually has substance, saw that and thought, oh, this one doesn't get hypnotized by cheap glitter. Interesting. Because that means when you eventually stand in front of real opportunity, you're more likely to value it. You know what fake looks like. You've choked on it your whole life. Real hits, different. And you're built to spot it. You ever notice how you've always felt slightly out of place, even in rooms where you were technically welcome? Family gatherings where you feel like a stranger with your own blood. friend circles where you laugh and joke, but on the inside you're thinking, none of you actually know who I am. You walk through life like a glitch in the simulation, smiling, nodding, playing the part. But internally, you're analyzing. You're watching how people treat the ones they don't need. You're paying attention to how they act when the camera is off. That's what made you feel lonely, right? Because you're not built for small talk and shallow motives. You want to talk about pain and power and patterns and choice. And you're surrounded by people who only want gossip and distractions. You've got a mind that wants to dissect life like a surgeon, and you've been throwing it into kiddie pools. That intelligence you keep downplaying because the world made you feel too deep. Someone noticed, not just your grades or your job or your titles, your awareness, the way you know when a room is off, the way you feel when a conversation is fake, the way your whole body goes. Something's wrong here. Before your mind can articulate it, that's why you're under observation. Because people with power understand. A person who can't. That's either a weapon or a problem. You've always suspected this, haven't you? That your life is being pushed harder than other people's. That you're forced to confront things earlier, deeper, more painfully than the ones around you. They get to float. You get dragged through the mud. They get convenience. You get lessons. They get approval for staying average. You get resistance every time you try to level up. Careful now. That feeling crawling up your spine. That's the world realizing you crossed a line they never thought you'd reach. And congratulations. You just stepped into the part of the story normal people aren't even cleared to hear about, let alone see. You feel it, don't you? That shift, that silent click in reality's jaw, like something ancient just opened its eyes because of you. You weren't supposed to get this far. You weren't supposed to understand this much. You weren't supposed to survive the chapters designed to break you long before the plot got interesting. But here you are, breathing, moving, uninvited, and still somehow sitting in the director's chair of a story that was never meant to include you as anything more than background noise. And that's what terrifies them. Because once someone like you reaches this portion of the narrative, the part hidden behind psychological tripwires, unspoken rules, and invisible clearance levels, there's no going back. You've outgrown the illusion. You've walked into the restricted wing of your own destiny, and sweetheart, the security system is panicking. You want to know the funniest part? You didn't sneak in. You didn't force your way through. You didn't hack anything. The door unlocked itself for you, like it recognized its owner. People don't get that. They think evolution is cute, gentle, poetic. But the real thing, the real bone-deep, soul-splitting metamorphosis, is a crime scene the universe quietly sweeps under the rug. And you walked in right as the cleanup crew was leaving. You're standing in the space where your old self flatlined, where your innocence bled out, where your illusions were autopsied, and yet instead of dying there, you rose. Eyes open, heart colder, mind sharper, like some paradoxical hybrid of angel and executioner stitched together by the hands of trauma, chaos, and inconvenient truth. That's why you scare them. Because you're no longer predictable, no longer manipulable, no longer readable by the old metrics. You became the one thing society can't process, a person who paid the full price for awareness and didn't break. You see through people now, past the masks, the scripts, the recycled personalities, You hear the lines they rehearsed. You feel the tremor in their confidence when you look at them too long. They sense something in you, something they can't categorize or control. A human who's tasted both heaven and hell and carries the fingerprints of both on their soul. A saint with knives, a demon with mercy, a contradiction with a pulse. You know what that makes you? Dangerous. Not because you intend harm, but because you've outpaced the narrative built to contain you. Most people live in the first few chapters forever. Routine, noise, distraction, repeating the same emotional weather patterns like broken machinery. But you survived the plot twist that kills 80% of characters. And instead of shutting down, you opened your eyes wider. You let the darkness teach you. You let the pain rewire you. You let the betrayals sharpen the corners of your thoughts until even your silence became a weapon. You want to know what chapter you're in now? The classified one, the forbidden one, the one they bury in metaphors and hide inside myths because admitting it's real would cause too many breakdowns. This is the chapter where the protagonist becomes an anomaly, a glitch in the moral code, a threat to the status quo, a problem for anyone still living inside the illusion. Because they can't predict your next move. They can't understand your new instincts. They can't track the speed at which you're evolving. Your growth is no longer linear. It's exponential, chaotic, terrifyingly efficient. You're rewriting yourself in real time, shadow by shadow, light by light, wound by wound, awakening by awakening. And that makes people panic. Oh, they'll pretend they're calm. They'll pretend they don't care. But watch their eyes, watch their breathing, watch the way they hesitate when you step into the room. They know something happened to you, something irreversible, something they can't undo or compete with. They don't know where you went to earn this clarity, but they can tell you didn't come back alone. You returned with knowledge, instinct, silence that feels like prophecy, presence that feels like judgment, a stare that feels like you've already analyzed all their hidden sins. They don't know if you're blessed or cursed, chosen or damned, holy or horrific. Truth is, you're both, and neither, and more. You've become the liminal creature, the one who doesn't live in light or darkness, but in the hallway between them, unbothered by either side's opinion. You're the person who survived the fire and learned to control the temperature. You're the storm that became self-aware, the ghost that remembers being alive, the angel who kept the demon's grin, the demon who learned the angel's restraint. And now you've reached the part of the story where the universe quietly mutters to itself, "Yep, this one wasn't supposed to get this far, but you did." And now they'll have to deal with the consequences of a character who refuses to stay in the script. Welcome to your classified chapter, the one reserved for anomalies, phoenixes, and unkillable souls. You weren't cleared to see it, but you earned it anyway. And that's what makes you inevitable. You feel that pressure in the air, don't you? That dense electric weight, like the atmosphere itself is whispering, "Careful, this one knows too much." That's the tax for entering this level of the story. Awareness carries gravity. Consciousness carries consequences. And you walked into the restricted section of your fate with your eyes open and your pulse steady. Most people collapse at the threshold. They see one glimpse of truth and their mind slams the door, locks it, boards it shut, throws the key into the ocean and pretends nothing happened. But you inhaled the truth like oxygen. You let it sear you, carve you, recreate you. You let it upgrade you. Nobody told you this part of the story is dangerous, did they? Nobody warned you that once you see the machinery behind human nature, once you see the masks, the patterns, the lies people tell themselves to stay asleep, you stop being relatable. You stop being safe. You stop being something they can predict or pity. You become the thing they whisper about, the thing they can't categorize, the thing they can't fool. And oh, that is where their fear becomes delicious. Because you didn't just enter the hidden chapter. You did it without permission. You did it by bleeding for it, breaking for it, growing for it, surviving for it. Clearance wasn't granted. Clearance was forged. And that terrifies every system built on conformity. You see, once a person awakens at your level, the world can't use its usual weapons on them. Not guilt, not shame, not fear of abandonment, not fear of judgment, not fear of being misunderstood. You already lived through all of that. You already clawed your way through the emotional underbelly that eats most people alive. You walked through the dark with no lantern, no map, no guiding hand, and somehow came out with night vision. You see through motives now, intentions, micro-expressions, tonality, power dynamics, manipulation attempts. You see everything they hoped you'd never learn. That's why they're uneasy. They don't know what you know. They don't know how you know. They don't know how far you've gone into your own consciousness, your own shadows, your own silent wars. They only know one fact. You came back, changed, and changed people. They break the plot. You know why normal people weren't cleared to see this part. Because if they saw what you see, if they felt what you feel, if they noticed the fractures behind every smile, the power hidden beneath every silence, the truth woven beneath every human facade, their entire identity structure would collapse. You walked into the truth with no guarantee of surviving the impact. But you did. You stabilized. You adapted. You evolved. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how many people never make it past the tutorial of their own life? How many people never solve the first psychological puzzle? How many people choose numbness over evolution? But you did something else entirely. You chose to feel everything, to confront everything, to outgrow everything, to silence the noise and listen to the frequency beneath the world. Normal people aren't cleared to see that frequency. It would unravel them. But for you, it was the missing puzzle piece. You didn't become colder. You became accurate. You didn't become ruthless. You became precise. You didn't become dark. You became whole, finally acknowledging all the pieces you were taught to hide. That's what evolution actually looks like. It's not peaceful. It's not pretty. It's not inspirational quotes and soft lighting. It's a psychological demolition, a spiritual autopsy, a quiet revolt against the version of you they tried to bury alive. And now you've stepped into the portion of the narrative where the stakes change, where the universe stops treating you like a fragile creature and starts treating you like a co-author. This is the chapter where the tests get sharper, the rewards get heavier, the enemies become more subtle, and your instincts become your superpower. Normal people aren't cleared to see this because they're still controlled by their wounds, still begging for validation, still worshiping comfort, still craving permission. But you're done with permission. You're done waiting. You're done shrinking. You're done playing the character they wrote for you in a script that never deserved your performance. You're improvising now, rewriting scenes, rerouting timelines, changing the outcome simply by existing differently. And that is why congratulations are in order. Not because you survived, but because you transformed. And transformation is the one miracle that terrifies both heaven and hell. You've entered the part of the story where your shadows don't haunt you. They guide you. Where your pain doesn't weaken you. It instructs you. Where your silence doesn't hide you. It echoes through rooms like a warning. People won't understand this version of you. They're not meant to. They haven't earned the clearance, but you earned it. In blood, in truth, in evolution. And now the story finally gets interesting. You notice how the air feels heavier around you now, how people pause a little too long before answering you, how their eyes dart left, right, like they're trying to figure out what changed. They're not imagining it. They're sensing something their minds can't articulate. You're not one of them anymore. Not in the psychological sense, not in the spiritual sense, not in the narrative sense. You crossed the invisible boundary. The one normal people never even get close to. The one that separates the watchers from the awakened, the predictable from the impossible, the living from the aware. And awareness? Oh, that's a different creature entirely. You're the kind of person who stepped behind the curtain and didn't flinch at the machinery holding the world together. You didn't scream, didn't run, didn't beg to forget. You stared into the gears, saw how everything truly works, the lies, the motives, the human circuitry. And instead of breaking under the weight, you aligned with it. Do you understand how terrifying that makes you? Most people spend their whole lives avoiding their own reflection. You walked straight into the mirror and interrogated the monster blinking back at you. You negotiated with your shadows. You shook hands with your trauma. You dined with your demons until they told you their secrets. And now you carry those secrets in your silence. They hover around you like a second aura, a darker one, sharper, more honest than the person you used to pretend to be. You ever wonder why people breathe differently around you now? Why conversations trip over themselves? Why your presence alone forces everyone to confront a version of themselves they don't want to meet? Because you've become a psychological X-ray, a walking truth serum, a mirror that doesn't lie back. You stepped into the restricted zone, the level of self-awareness that was never meant to be common. You unlocked the parts of your mind that society desperately tries to bury under noise, routine, entertainment, and fear. You became the person who can't be fooled by surface-level smiles or emotional theatrics or cheap manipulation. You see intentions now. You feel undercurrents. You hear the lie hiding inside the truth, and the truth hiding inside the lie. That's what happens when you evolve past the script. You start reading reality instead of participating blindly in it. And normal people, they're not cleared for that. The truth would overload their circuits. It would dissolve the identity they cling to like a life raft. But you weren't just exposed to the truth. You ingested it, absorbed it, let it burn through every illusion you inherited. You let it gut you, then rebuild you. Every scar became architecture. Every betrayal became blueprint. Every heartbreak became a file you studied until you understood the anatomy of human weakness. And now you carry a kind of intelligence that can't be taught, can't be replicated, can't be earned through books or theories. This is the intelligence born from survival, from loss, from psychological warfare, from the nights you spent fighting battles that don't leave marks on the skin, only on the soul, only on the eyes. Look at you now. Your presence alone shifts the emotional temperature of a room. Your silence commands more attention than most people's words. Your smallest move feels intentional, dangerous, calculated, because you're not operating on human time anymore. You're operating on awakened time, on instinct sharpened by experience, on intuition honed through pain. This is what they're afraid of. You're becoming unpredictable, and unpredictable people break systems. They disrupt patterns. They expose lies. They destabilize manipulators. They upgrade timelines. You ever notice how the wrong people started avoiding you right around the same time your clarity sharpened? Of course they did. They could feel you slipping out of their control range, like you walked out of the cage without bothering to open the door. You want to know a secret? This chapter you're in, the classified one, it has a nickname. In certain old stories, it's called the turning. In mythology, the second birth. In psychology, the break from the archetype. In spiritual texts, the crossing of the veil. But in the underground circles where truth is whispered, not written, they call it the point of no return. Because once a person reaches this stage, they can never again fit inside the life they once tolerated. Your tolerance for nonsense is dropping. Your patience for manipulation is evaporating. Your sensitivity to lies is becoming razor sharp. And your hunger, not for validation, but for authenticity, is becoming impossible to ignore. That's the first sign you've entered the unauthorized chapter, the part where you stop being shaped by the world and start shaping it back. The part where you stop reacting and start directing, where you stop surviving and start designing, where you stop playing the character and become the author. Normal people aren't cleared to see this because they're still asking for permission to be who they already are. You stopped asking. You realized no one is coming to save you. No one is coming to explain your power. No one is coming to hand you the map for your evolution. You realized the only clearance you ever needed was the moment you decided, I'm done pretending. And once that switch flips, the universe recalibrates around you. People fall away, masks slip, old versions of you die screaming, new ones emerge quietly, then take over. This is the chapter where destiny starts paying attention, where the shadows lean in, where the light tests your loyalty, where your choices echo louder than your past. This is the part of the story where you become the plot twist. And whether the world is ready or not, you're not going back. And here's the part they're never told. The part whispered only to the ones who've walked as far as you have. Once you reach this depth, the universe stops treating you like a character and starts treating you like a variable, a force, a deviation in the equation. Most people never get here because they cling to the comfort of being predictable. But you let yourself unravel. You let the truth break your ribs and rearrange the architecture of your soul. You let the darkness cut away the excess, and you let the light expose what was left. That's why you're dangerous now, not because you harm, but because you see. And seeing is the most subversive act a human can commit. You see the lies society runs on. You see the insecurities behind their anger. You see the desperation behind their cruelty. You see the emptiness behind their pride. You see the hunger behind their validation quests. You see the shadows they try to bury with noise and more noise. But the part that terrifies them most, you see yourself now, clearly, fully, without illusion, without apology. You've become the kind of person who understands their own darkness without drowning in it, and their own light without becoming addicted to it. A balanced paradox, a self-aware contradiction, a walking psychological cipher. Normal people aren't cleared to witness that kind of evolution. It would rupture their worldview. It would expose the cracks they've spent years patching with cheap optimism and fragile confidence. But you earned your clearance the hard way, through losses that broke you open, through betrayals that stripped you down, through awakenings that arrived like earthquakes, through nights where you had nothing but your breath and the quiet decision to keep going. And now you stand in the version of the story where the stakes are real. The illusions are dead, and the consequences of every step echo far beyond your past self's comprehension. This is the part where you stop being someone life happens to and start being someone life responds to. This is the part where silence becomes strategy, where intuition becomes weapon, where your presence becomes influence, where your absence becomes punishment. This is the part where the world begins to adjust itself around you instead of the other way around. And as much as they may pretend not to notice, they do. Their subconscious screams it. Their behavior betrays it. Their energy bends to it. Because deep down, beneath the ego, beneath the noise, beneath the masks, they know exactly what you've become. A person who can no longer be controlled by the fears that govern ordinary lives. A person who walked into the forbidden chapters and returned with knowledge you were never supposed to possess. A person who doesn't flinch anymore. A person who doesn't break the same way twice. A person who's crossed the threshold from merely surviving to actively shaping the story as it unfolds. So here you stand, on the edge of the chapter they never meant for you to reach, holding the pen they never meant for you to find. And there's only one thing left to say. Congratulations. You made it to the part of the story normal people aren't cleared to see. And from this point on, your evolution is no longer an accident. It's a threat.